Chris, let me ask you something. Do you believe in the multiverse theory?
I mean, I never really thought about it a whole lot, but I mean, yeah, probably. Like, it's crazy to think like this is it, just us in this huge universe, just us, right?
All right, I agree. So that means somewhere there is a universe where we were far higher on Troy Franklin, Xavier Hutchinson, and Kayshawn Booty than Emeka Egbuka, Quentin Johnson, and Darnell Mooney, right?
I guess there is.
Well, anything's possible, but I think right here, right now in this universe, you want to set a winning lineup and pick the wide receivers, and we're going to try to help you do that again in week 9. Let's go through every matchup and figure out who you should start. Now, we're going to have 4 teams off once again. It's going to be the Eagles, Bucks, Browns, and Jets. And for week 9, here are your must-start wide receivers, no matter who else you got. Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Rashee Rice. Do us a quick favor, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, just click that subscribe button. We are on the way to 100K. We want you to join us and be a part of the Endgame community. The first game of the week is going to be the Ravens taking on the Dolphins on Thursday night. We've been promised Lamar Jackson. If he is back in the saddle, that's got to be good for Zay Flowers, who, let's face it, was still not too bad last week.
Yeah, hey, look, that was one we did get right. We said yes to Zay Flowers a lot, even despite Snoop Huntley, because the Bears were down basically their entire secondary. He had a pretty nice game. Sounds like Lamar is going to be back. You got to feel pretty good about Zay Flowers. He's mostly been solid this week or this year, so I think in this matchup, he's got to be solid against the Dolphins.
Right, and the Dolphins far worse against the run. Still not great against the pass, despite last week, right? This Ravens team will still probably keep the foot on the gas pedal. I just hope the Dolphins are able to still do something on offense like last week and keep this game competitive. No guarantees here, but yeah, Zay Flowers, I think regardless, you got to feel solid about him. Now for the Dolphins. Okay, just when you'd given up on this offense, here they come again. Jalen Waddle back to looking like a solid start, and this looks like a smash spot against the Ravens defense, although they were better last week too.
They were better. I talked about it. They're going to get healthier coming out of the bye, and they did get healthier. But look, I still feel pretty good about Jalen Waddle. The Ravens play the 3rd most man, the 4th most single high. He's got a 0.37 target per route run and a 39% first read percentage against these shells. I don't quite expect what we saw last week. I don't expect the Dolphins to be that good. You can't always count on a long touchdown, but I think he's got to be solid this week. And look, I think you can start considering Malik Washington as a flex again. He's got 4 more catches in 4 straight games, so he doesn't have a huge ceiling, but at least he does something.
Well, let's face it, this offense has been pretty schizophrenic for 2 straight weeks. Tua was just looking horrible, and then, of course, last week, 4 touchdowns. This largely depends on which Tua shows up. They're at home against a still subpar defense. You got to figure this is good. Jalen Waddle, sure, he should still go back to being a solid pick. I've got to put him in the risky solid just because, again, I just never know which Dolphins team is going to actually show up. Malik Washington, he's clinging to flex value, but look, that touchdown catch he had last week was very impressive, and he is the number 2 guy here, so just through target volume alone, they are both startable. All right, now we got the Bears taking on the Bengals. Jamar Chase back to being elite. That's what we're talking about. All right, now for the Chicago side, before we get to T. Higgins and the Bengals, let's talk Rome Odunze. Kind of like what I mentioned with those Dolphins and those receivers. Look, you got 2 weeks in a row where all of a sudden he's taking a dip, and all of a sudden he bounces back. That first read target share last week was back up to 28%. What do we expect this week?
I expect a good Rome Odunze game. I mean, it's always risky with this Bears offense, right? But this is the Bengals. Like, come on. I specifically did not put Caleb on the panic portion of the panic video because I said he gets one more chance against the Bengals before we're full-fledged panic mode. So this is the Bengals. Too good of a spot. I think Rome Odunze has to be strong. Probably outside of the must-starts, my next favorite wide receiver. And look, DJ Moore finally had a nice game. Yeah, a big part of it was that kind of fluky one-handed catch play there, but it's the Bengals. I think you could at least consider flexing DJ Moore this week.
Well, okay, I'm gonna just say I agree. I got them both in the same tier here as you. Adunze, really, this comes down to game script because the last 2 weeks it was DeAndre Swift, right? The Bears were able to run the ball and stay ahead. You saw what happened when they fell behind last week. This was good for Adunze. They had to pass the ball more, and I feel like that'll happen this week. Even though the Bengals are the worst run defense, they're also a pretty good offense. This game does have the makings of a shootout. So, yeah, I still think if I have a Dunze, I'm pretty much starting him. And DJ Moore is still barely hanging on to flex value for me. It was a lot of just that one catch, though. Come on. All right, now T. Higgins. Thought he could smash last week. Against the Jets, no Sauce Gardner. He did score a touchdown, but that's it? I mean, really? What happened to the targets?
That's the thing. Like, Joe Flacco, I mean, like, he just sees Jamar Chase, right? And like, hey, who can blame him? Jamar Chase is awesome. I mean, Jamar Chase, I think I saw the stat. He just set the record for the most targets over a 2-game span in the history of the NFL. Now, granted, they didn't track targets way back in the day, but still, pretty amazing the targets here. So, even though this is a very good spot for T. Higgins, we just talked about it. We talked about Zay Flowers. Bears' entire secondary is decimated. Maybe Tyreek Stevenson will play this week, but he's basically the last man standing in the secondary. You got to feel pretty good about T, but at the same time, it's like, T. Higgins out there like, hey, Joe, I'm open too, and it doesn't even matter. So I'm going to say solid.
Yeah, I mean, don't want to overreact to last week because it was just a down game, but maybe we overreacted the week before. We had a big game. I'm going to just, say he should get targeted in this game. It's such a great matchup against the Bears here. Again, if I feel like this is going to be a high-scoring game, then I've got to feel good about T. Higgins. He had 10 targets before last week, and Joe Flacco has looked really good, honestly. So I'm going to put T. Higgins there, the low end of the strong tier. Got plenty more matchups to talk about, but first, make sure you get into the Underdog app and set your picks for Week 9. And if you haven't done that yet, you haven't signed up even for Underdog, well, this is the best time because you still get deposit match up to $1,000 worth of bonus cash for your first deposit if you use code ENDGAME in the promo code section. And you also get a free pick every week. There's a gimme, and new customers also get $100 of bonus funds put into the account as soon as you spend $5 towards any pick. You already get the free pick, you get free cash. Try it now if you haven't yet. Sign up on Underdog and use code ENDGAME when you check out. The Vikings taking on the Lions this week in Detroit. You got the Sun God, you start him. Just for transparency, we actually had a small debate about whether Justin Jefferson was a no-doubter, but look, if you have Jefferson, are you really benching him? No, just start him. All right, what about Jordan Addison in Minnesota? And keep in mind, Carson Wentz is done, officially done for the season, so it's going to be J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, so we've yet to see Addison with McCarthy, right? So this is a little tricky here, but I don't even really like this matchup. Detroit, they play the fourth most man this year against man, albeit he hasn't played the full season, but we've got a pretty decent sample here now. He's fourth on the team in targets per route run, only has a 14% first read percentage, but he's always got that big play upside. They're going to be in the dome here in Detroit, so no weather issues. So I'm going to say flex, but I don't love him this week.
Yeah, that's a good point for those who don't know. Remember, we've seen McCarthy twice, right? The first 2 weeks of the season, Addison was still suspended, so they haven't even played together in a regular season game. But look, this game, the Vikings are probably going to have to pass a lot more than they want to keep up with Detroit. Addison's a good receiver. Even if the jury's still out on McCarthy, he'll target Addison enough. He's a high upside flex. And then as far as Detroit goes, here's the dilemma. JMO, is he still a high upside flex, or are you just tired of dealing with this?
I'm tired of dealing with it, and this is not even a good spot for him. The Vikings play the most too high in the entire NFL, 70% of the time. He ranks dead last among Detroit pass catchers in targets per route run versus too high. That's right. He's even behind tight end monster Brock Wright in targets per route run when he faces too high. He's a boom bust player right now who's mostly busted. I can't do it this week.
Well, actually, I was all set to say barely a flex just because maybe, but after seeing your research, I'll slide him onto the bench as well.
Do you want to get advice from Pierre and myself at the tip of your fingertips? Start sit, waiver wire, trades, and more? Well, you can do all of this and more on our new app, Draft Lane. We have the ability to view your roster, waivers, and more to give you the right feedback to make the perfect choice. Download Draft Lane from the App Store or Google Play, or use these handy QR codes. And first-time users can use code ENDGAME to get 10 free credits and get your questions answered today.
Next up, we got the Panthers at the Packers. So last week, Carolina had a new old quarterback in Andy Dalton. Actually wasn't a bad thing for Tedero McMillan. He had a decent game. Xavier Legette and the other guys, not so much. But look, regardless of whether it's Dalton, Bryce Young, on the road against this Packers defense, that's got to worry a lot of us.
Certainly, you can't feel good here. And really, what makes me not feel good is Packers play a ton of zone, 78% of the time. You've talked about this as well. Ted's been much better against man coverage this year than zone. But if it is Andy Dalton, like you said, Andy Dalton targeted them significantly more, gave him more opportunities here. I can only say whether it's Bryce Young or Andy Dalton, risky, solid. I mean, he's clearly the number one wide receiver here. He gets the targets, but I do worry about the matchup. So risky, low end, solid. Anybody else, Legette, Coker, whoever, no thanks.
Even though he's the number one guy, and there's a lot of talk now mid-season. This is when rookie wide receivers start to come on. And sure, he had a pretty good game, but this matchup, I'm worried enough. I'll say high upside flex, but risky. Xavier Legette, and this guy shows up every once in a while and then disappears. Can't do it, not here. You can sit him. Now for the Packers, remember good old days when they had 4 or 5 different receivers. You didn't know who you wanted to start or if you just wanted to avoid it. We're not quite there yet. Jaden Reed is still out, but Christian Watson is back, and yes, he has complicated things. So now what?
Yeah, I mean, wait till Jaden Reed gets back. This is going to be an absolute nightmare, but it's already becoming kind of a nightmare. Look, Romeo Doubs, I liked him. I did not think Watson would be that involved. Definitely took a hit here. But I'll tell you who took the major hit was Matthew Golden. Only 3 targets in that game. I think you got to sit Matthew Golden now, sadly. I think you can still flex Doubs here. I mean, I don't love this matchup, but I'm also not scared of it. And then I think Christian Watson actually going to be a upside flex play. He looked pretty good last week. You got to think he'll be a little bit healthier here, but I can't love any of these guys.
No, you can't. Even as good as Jordan Love has looked the last couple of weeks. The thing is, like you said, we didn't know at all how much Christian Watson would be involved, much less that he would lead the team in receiving. Christian Watson cooks against man coverage, and the Panthers are the heaviest zone team out of all the defenses, so it's not a great spot. He always has that home run potential, so he's a flex. Romeo Doubs, somewhat of a floor. He's a flex. And sadly, Matthew Golden looks like one of those rookie receivers that might take a step back for the rest of the season. Next, we got the Broncos at the Texans. All right, so in Denver, it was Troy Franklin, not Marvin Mims. I mean, Courtland Sutton did something, but yeah, it was a Troy Franklin week. What can you say? Whose week is it going to be this time?
I don't know if it's going to be any of their weeks on the road against this Texans defense. I mean, this is becoming one of those defenses you almost want to stay away from when it comes to the passing game here. They're the 4th toughest versus wide receivers. Plus, they play zone 80% of the time. Courtland Sutton actually ranks 5th on the team in targets per route run against zone. He's much better against man. I'm going to say just risky, solid for Courtland Sutton. I think it's going to be another game kind of like what we saw last week. And then, look, I know Troy Franklin. You're going to be like, oh, Troy Franklin. I know we're going to get so many Troy Franklin questions this week, but that was the Cowboys. This is on the road against the Texans. You want to chase that game from last week? Go ahead. I think he's just a risky flex.
And this is why we had Franklin questions, because it was the Cowboys. These are polar opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of matchup for defense. So I will say this too, in that Denver secondary, Denver, one of the best pass defenses out there, but now with Pat Surtain out, Houston might have the best pass defense in the NFL going forward. I mean, we'll see. So I'm with you. Sutton is a risky solid, and Franklin is a kind of what the heck flex. So now there are questions on the other side. First of all, is Nico Collins going to play this week? Is Christian Kirk going to play this week? Who benefits if they don't again? Is it Jalen Noel? Is it Xavier Hutchinson? There's also Jaden Higgins, who scored a touchdown. But I think it's worth reiterating that Pat Surtain, who you worry about shutting down the other team's top receiver, he is out.
He's out. Looks like he's headed to injured reserve, so that's got to be good for Nico Collins this week. Got to hope he plays, clears the concussion protocol, but at the same time, how good has it even been for Nico Collins this year, even in great matchups? So, look, it's not like the rest of the Denver defense is horrible here or anything. They still did a good job against Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, even with Surtain missing basically the entire second half. So, I'm going to say risky solid. I'm not starting Jaden Higgins or Xavier Hutchinson if Nico plays. I mean, they benefited from Nico being out and not sitting them. But I will say, I think you can still flex Jalen Noel. He's the guy. He's a slot wide receiver. Look, Braxton Berrios, who's the other guy who could potentially play the slot, left that game with a chest injury. He's all they got in the slot, so you can flex him.
Yeah, and he is one of those rookie receivers who's been coming on. Look, he benefits, of course, from Christian Kirk being out. Don't know when we'll see Kirk again, but it's still got a role here. And no one's getting the Surtain shadow, but he wouldn't get that anyways. I think he's flex worthy. Nico, I think we can slide him in as a low-end solid pick now that we know that Surtain is out. Let's talk Falcons and Patriots. All right, so last week we were without Drake London, kind of a surprise inactive. So everyone got on board the Darnell Mooney bandwagon and quickly regretted that. So are we going to regret starting any Falcons this week like we did last week?
Well, I don't know how you can start down on Mooney after last week. I mean, look, if it's Michael Penix Jr., it'll probably be better for him. But, man, after what he did last week, I'd have a hard time putting him in my lineup. I'm going to say Drake London if he plays, which it sounds like they expect him back this week. But, of course, we're not going to know probably till later in the week after practices. I'm going to say solid. But, again, I'm going to put him like lower end, risky solid. He's going to get a lot of Christian Gonzalez. So this is not a great matchup here. I do hope it's Michael Penix Jr. this week because, man, that with Kirk Cousins last week, if they were auditioning him for a trade, that trade window is gone. No one's trading for Kirk Cousins after last week.
No, nor should they be. I'd say this does depend. I mean, if Cousins is out there, I know he didn't have London to throw to, but how encouraged can you be? So, for the most part, I know I'm just starting Drake London, but I will say if it is Kirk Cousins again, I might slide him down to like the flex tier, but right now let's just say solid. Darnell Mooney, I just no. And then the Patriots continue to flip things around on us. You know, it should have been a big Diggs week, and yeah, he scored, but that's all he did. Like, he didn't exactly smash. And Kayshon Boutte, in a negative matchup, somehow did. This is becoming a little bit aggravating. I get that you can never tell when a guy's going to score a long touchdown or not, but I really don't know exactly which Falcons defense is going to show up either.
Yeah, I kind of think they're going to be better than the defense we saw last week. This is another week where it's a good matchup for Diggs and a not so good matchup for Boutte. You look at the Falcons, they play the most single high. 72% of the time he has a 0.26 targets per route run, 3.21 yards per route run versus single high. Plus, he plays about half the time in the slot, so he won't see as much A.J. Terrell. Whereas Kayshon Boutte is probably going to see a ton of A.J. Terrell. But, look, Kayshon Boutte always has that big play touchdown upside, so I think he's got to be in the flex consideration. And I'm still going to say Diggs solid.
Agree. I mean, at this point, I don't think Boutte's ever not going to be at least a flex consideration. It's like he's always got that in him. It's not always going to happen, but it's always possible, right? Get that long touchdown. And then Diggs is still the leading target getter here. I mean, things happen, right? You're not going to smash every week. So he should be at least solid. This week, the 49ers are going to take on the Giants. And so I just kind of want to get this one done with quickly. 49ers, who's going to play and who would you actually consider playing?
Well, we know Jennings and Bourne are going to play. We hope Pearsall is going to play. But I'll say this, I'm not big on Pearsall this week, even if he does play. Giants play the second most man. He's been way better against zone than man this year. So if he does somehow play just a flex here, Bourne, I'm not starting Bourne. That train ride is over. I will say I've got Jennings again, low end of the solid here. He's had a pretty big target share here. Gonna hope it's Brock Purdy finally this week. He's also been much better against man. He leads the team with a 0.35 targets per route run and a 50% first read percentage against man coverage. So you never know what you're going to get from Jennings, but he's at least risky solid.
Well, let's go down the line here. Bourne, you're right. Just sit, right? It's not going to happen for him unless both these receivers are out. Jennings, Again, he's getting targets, but what is he doing with them? He had an ugly drop last week. Is he still really injured? He's got broken ribs and all sorts of issues. Probably. Is he unsatisfied here? Quarreling with a coach and wants a new contract? Yes, probably that too. It's a big headache here. I think he's just a flex if you need him, because we haven't seen much upside this year. And then it's funny because somebody even asked us on the live stream the other day, like, why do you guys still like Ricky Pearsall? I'm like, I remember him being good back when he played, like in week 2. Look, he's good. It's just he needs to be out there. I don't know if he's going to be out there. So for this week, even if he does play, he's just a flex. And the Giants, already without Malik Neighbors and now without Scatterby at running back. So do they lean more on the passing game? Guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, who came back?
Probably. You got to think they will. I like Wan'Dale this week, actually, and I almost never like Wan'Dale Robinson, but I talked about him when I talked about Jalen Noel last week. 49ers are allowing the second most points to slot wide receivers on the entire season, but you look at it over the last 3 games where they basically have not had Fred Warner. He played very little 3 weeks ago before injuring his ankle there. They're allowing the most points to slot wide receivers. I think this is a good spot for Wan'Dale. I'm going to say solid. Slayton to me is what Slayton always is. He could hit on a big touchdown. He's kind of like Kayshon Boutte, right? But maybe I'd prefer Boutte. But he could always hit on that long touchdown or not. He's a flex.
Yeah, this could be a decent Wan'Dale game. The thing is, Darius Slayton, immediately upon returning from that hamstring injury, got more targets, right? I think these guys are both just flexes. The upside cannot be great. I don't feel like this is going to be a super high-scoring game. And Wan'Dale is much better against man. The Niners aren't a heavy man coverage team, so flexes for a floor. All right, now we got the Colts taking on the Steelers. Now look, even in a game where the Colts really didn't even have to pass very much, big game from Michael Pittman, pretty good. Josh Downs scored a touchdown. So how good do you have to feel about these guys against that Steelers defense?
Yeah, you got to feel pretty good. This Steelers defense not looking very good these days. Not to mention, they're allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to outside wide receivers. I think Pittman has to be very solid this week. Like high-end solid. How do you bench this guy? He's been too good. And I'll say even Josh Downs. Like, I don't love Downs this week because he's better against zone than man. But in this offense, he could always score, especially against the Steelers. So you got to consider him a flex.
I'm with you on both counts. You got to feel really good about Pittman this week. Really the only concern is if the Steelers are able to keep it close enough where the Colts have to even pass much. It wasn't an issue last week, right? So it shouldn't be much of an issue this week. For that Steelers offense, DK continues to be solid. Figure he'll kind of still be that this week. Do we have a new number 2 receiver here? Roman Wilson making an appearance. And is he going to take over for Calvin Austin, or is this just nothing?
I don't know if he's going to take over for Calvin Austin. I don't know if it's nothing, but I'm not sure I'm quite interested yet. Like, look, you want to add Roman Wilson, you want to stash Roman Wilson, sure, but I'm not ready to start Roman Wilson after last week. DK Metcalf, yeah, like you said, he's solid here. Colts now allow the 9th most points to outside wide receivers. Charvarius Ward is hurt. Their best corner is out. So, yeah, he should be fine. Solid start here.
Yeah, DK's been solid. He'll be solid. This isn't a great spot for him, but they'll probably need to pass a fair bit. And look, I didn't say to go out and pick up Roman Wilson on waivers. Again, we'd probably need more here, but I might tell you to stash him if you've got room. This week, the Chargers are taking on the Titans in Tennessee. So let's go through that Chargers receiving room, which has definitely changed since early part of the season. Ladd McConkey continues to get better. Quentin Johnson is now continuing to disappear. In fact, he completely disappeared from the box score last week. 0 targets, and then Keenan Allen's, I guess, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, this is going to be a tricky one this week because, Ladd's been so good, but you look at it, Titans play zone 78% of the time. He's only got a 0.17 targets per route run and a 1.78 yards per route run, and just 0.26 fantasy points per route run versus zone. He's way better versus man, but that said, how do you really bench Ladd McConkey? I think he's got to be solid. This matchup, I think, actually does favor Keenan Allen. Look, L'Jarius Sneed out, and he actually does play on the outside over 60% of the time. They're allowing the 8th most points to outside wide receivers, so I think Keenan also going to be solid, but he's probably going to be the guy I prefer in this matchup here. And I mean, how can you do it with Quentin Johnston? Another guy who's much better against man than zone. 0 targets last week, 5 targets over the last 2 games. No way.
Yeah, whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter. You just can't start a guy that's not even getting involved at all. So Quentin Johnston's an easy sit. And look, I know recency bias always tells our brains, react to what just happened, right? What do we see? Ladd McConkey, great game. Keenan Allen, But this matchup, it could go the other way. But I think they're just both solid options here. It's Tennessee. And for that Titans offense, we've seen it now 2 games in a row. Chimere Dike has been the leading receiver. Not a huge game, but at least fantasy relevant, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to take note here when a guy's getting this kind of usage. And not only that, you look at it here, Chargers. I mean, look, the Chargers have a good secondary up and down, but they're slightly worse versus slot than on the outside. He plays primarily in the slot like 70% of the time, but still, you can't feel good here. This is not a great matchup, and the Titans are still not a great offense. So I'm going to say risky flex.
A flex with some upside. You know, I broke him down a little bit more in the waiver wire video. I mean, 2 games in a row now, he's leading the team in targets and receptions in that span. They don't have a whole lot else. Calvin Ridley, still sidelined for the time being. So he is flex worthy. Iowa Manor, I know we still get questions. You don't really have to hold on to him. Now in Saints versus Rams, everybody's pretty happy to see Puka Nacua coming back. So you put him right in your lineup. And then there's the Saints wide receivers. Look, for their part, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, they're doing the best they can with what they have. But what do they have? Now all of a sudden it's like quarterback carousel.
Yeah, we don't know. And even Kellen Moore said, he hasn't made a decision yet, so we'll have to wait and see here. But does it really even matter? I mean, I guess I prefer Rattler because we've seen Olave be pretty good with Rattler. But it's like Rattler significantly better than Tyler Shuck. I don't know. But this isn't a bad spot for him here. The Rams play zone 78% of the time. He's got a 0.31 targets per out run, 2.49 yards per out run, and a 39% first read versus zone. Rams not a scary secondary. I'm going to say he's solid. I'm not going to start Rashid Shaheed. First of all, left that game with an injury. We don't even know how healthy he's going to be. He's also better against man than zone. I'm going to sit Shaheed this week.
Well, I will say I don't think there's a big difference between the 2 quarterbacks. It probably really doesn't matter a whole lot who starts. I mean, you've got to put at least Olave in the solid tier. Second in the NFL in targets. That's got to mean something, right? So Olave is still solid regardless. Shaheed, I'm not worried. It seemed like that injury, they said it was minor. I'm assuming he'll play. I think he's at least worth a flex because I do expect the Saints to have to pass the ball a lot to keep up with the Rams. And the Rams don't just have Puka, they also have Devontae Adams. He's a pretty good wide receiver from what I've heard.
Yeah, he's pretty good, especially if you like wide receivers that score touchdowns. But somehow, the Saints, you talked about on the running back video, they've somehow been like terrible against the run lately and not so bad against wide receivers. Plus, with Puka back, we know where the bulk of the targets are going here. So, but Adams, like I said, he's always got touchdown upside, but I can only say solid this week with Puka coming back.
Yeah, I think, you're right. Everything you said, Devontae Adams may not have his best game. I just kind of look at the wide receiver landscape. There just aren't that many receivers I feel secure about more than Devontae Adams. He always could score, right? Tied for second in terms of receiving touchdowns. He's one of the leaders in end zone targets. That is not going to change, right? That's not because Puka has missed so much time. They're just always looking for Devontae in the end zone. So I don't have a lot of other strong starts at receiver. I think Adams is one. If I got him, I pretty much just start him. It's time to talk Jags at Raiders. All right, so both these teams coming off of their bye. A lot of discussion about what are they going to do here in Jacksonville. BTJ, it's just looking rougher by the week with those drops, right? Lack of focus. Doesn't sound like Liam Cohen is happy. And then you got Travis Hunter with his best game of the season before the bye. So that said, how good do you feel about either one of these receivers?
I'm going to say both solid, but I actually do like BTJ this week. Raiders play zone at the highest rate here, and he's been better versus zone than man. Also, they're allowing the 4th most points to wide receivers, the 6th most points to outside wide receivers. This is a good spot for BTJ. I'm going to take a chance here, solid. And then I think after what we saw with Travis Hunter before the bye, you got to take a chance, also solid.
Oh, yeah. You've got to see, look, no guarantee he gets another 100-yard game or even that he sees so many snaps on offense. I mean, take those comments with a grain of salt, but I think you got to find out with Hunter. It's the Raiders, man. I'm going to say Hunter's solid. I'll be a little more skeptical on BTJ. Again, I feel like they're trying to motivate him, get him focused. But look, this is the week. Either it's a bounce back or it's another step back. I mean, we'll see how he responds. You figure he should bounce back, but there's still risk. We have to acknowledge it. And speaking of risk, the Raiders offense. All right, Geno Smith has been legit horrible in the last couple of weeks, and then Jacoby Myers still wants out. So, does he show up to try to get out, or is this just something you want to avoid?
I mean, it's something I would prefer to avoid if I can, but they're at home. They're coming off the bye. The Jags allow the 7th most points to wide receivers, so I'm just going to say they're both risky flexes. If you have to do it, you have to do it, but really, what's the upside here?
Very risky just because the quarterback play and the offensive line play. Look, I don't expect the Jags to roll them necessarily, but target share is not guaranteed for any of these guys. So again, risky flex. The Chiefs taking on the Bills this week should be a good one. Like at this point, Rashee Rice, just lock him into your lineup. What about the rest of the crew there as far as the Chiefs receivers go? Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, anybody?
Well, I mean, if there's anybody else here, it's going to be Xavier Worthy. But what is even the upside here? I thought last week could be a good game. I mean, he wasn't terrible, but again, what is the upside here? He's barely a floor play, so if you need to flex him, you can. The other guys, no thanks.
Yeah, I think Worthy's taken a bigger hit than we expected with Rice coming back. I mean, even in 2 pretty good matchups for him, just not a lot there. He's definitely flex worthy. I mean, you never know, he breaks off a big play or anything like that, but just a flex. And then for Buffalo, they got several guys too who are slightly involved, but it kind of feels now like this wide receiving room is basically just Khalil Shakir for fantasy.
Exactly. I liked him a lot last week. We both did. Don't like him quite as much this week, but still, he's their number 1 wide receiver. He's got Josh Allen. He just always feels solid to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was a smash spot, very zone-heavy team in Carolina. This isn't quite that same kind of spot, but again, the leading target getter for Josh Allen and the Bills, this could be a shootout, so he's solid. And then the night game is going to be the Seahawks taking on the Commanders. All right, so welcome back, JSN. Get back in the lineup. Cooper Kupp, Torrey Horton, probably not so much.
I actually don't mind Cooper Kupp this week. Look, Washington allows the 3rd most points to slot wide receivers. Like, not a ton of upside here, but if you need to flex him, you can. Risky, but you can. Torrey Horton, not so much.
Yeah, well, that's true. Look, we still got teams on bye. There are worse options. Cooper Kupp for a floor. I'm okay flexing him. Not so much Horton. And now, as far as Washington, just when you feel like they're on the way back on the mend, and then Terry McLaurin, hey, nice touchdown, and then he re-injures that same quad. So are you expecting this to be even an extended absence? And then what does that mean for Debo?
Yeah, I mean, this is starting to look like maybe it's going to be a lost season for Terry McLaurin. This is brutal. Was having a nice game, re-injures the quad. Let's hope maybe it was just precautionary and he's okay this time. But look, not only that, we got to wonder, is JD going to play? Also, remember the Seahawks secondary was very banged up heading into the bye. Are they going to get healthier? I mean, there's a lot of ifs here as we head into this week. I'll say if Terry plays, he's good to go. And they're like, no, we were just being safe. We were losing. We were just being safe. Risky, solid here. And then Debo, I will say, I think Debo is solid. I might actually prefer Debo this week, even if Terry plays, even though he was horrible last week. Seahawks play the 3rd most zone 80% of the time. Debo much better versus zone. So Terry, risky, solid. If he plays, Debo, solid.
Well, look, if the Terry injury was nothing, right, just precautionary or a scare, okay, I can say that he's solid with Jay Daniels playing. As far as Debo, I don't know, he just does not look the same the last couple of weeks. That heel maybe still bothering him. He's been out there and done a lot of nothing. I think he's just a risky flex until we see something different. I don't know. Are we going to get the early season version of Debo back at all? I want to see it. And the Monday night game is going to be the Cards at the Cowboys. All right, so CeeDee Lamb is a no-doubter. And usually pretty much any receiver against that Cowboys defense, you want to fire him up. This Cardinals offense, it's like Marvin Harrison and then what?
No, not much behind Marvin Harrison. I'm either starting Marvin Harrison or I'm not. Look, I like Marvin Harrison this week. You look at it, Dallas allowing the second most points to wide receivers on the outside. We know Trayvon Diggs on IR. But then on the flip side, you look at it, you say, well, Harrison is usually much better versus man. The Cowboys are playing zone 79% of the time. But, another but here for you. You look at it over the last 2 games with Trayvon Diggs out, they're only playing zone 55% of the time, which I think is hilarious because Trayvon Diggs went to the defensive coordinator and said, hey, can we play more man? I'm better against man. He said no. And then when he's out, they play more man. So I don't know. Maybe they're just messing with Diggs. I don't know. But anyways, all that to said there, I like Marvin Harrison this week. He's solid.
It's the Cowboys defense. You pretty much have to start Marvin Harrison. Although I will say I'm also worried about the quarterback situation. Is Kyler coming back? And do I even want him to come back? And I'm being serious. Like Marvin Harrison, Kyler Murray, that connection hasn't been there, but it's still the Cowboys. So he's solid, right? Don't expect him to go ballistic. What about George Pickens on the other side here against the Cardinals?
Yeah, I mean, look, he got a little lucky last week. Didn't have a huge game, but had a nice game. Got to play the second half without Pat Surtain. Had some nice catches in the second half. He's always got that big playability. And kind of like what I said, talking about the Commanders with the Seahawks, same thing here. Like the Cardinals secondary was very banged up heading into the bye. How healthy are they going to be coming out of the bye? But that said, George Pickens always has upside. He's always got that big play potential. I think you're pretty much starting him. He's solid.
Yeah, we were rightfully nervous last week. He still wound up okay. This matchup is pretty much just middle of the road as you can get, so he's a solid play. All right, there you have it. Everything you need to know about the wide receiver situation for Week 9. Of course, you want help at every other position, so don't worry. Everything you need to know is on the playlist.